Here with Emily, who's a little bit under the weather. Emily, how you doing?
I'm doing well, other than that, but gamblers got to gamble, so here we are.
Emily's a trooper. She's a hard worker. She just came from her other job. You remind me of like in Living Color, Emily. You remember that show with that family that had like 12 jobs, each of the family members? I'm probably dating myself. That show's probably way older than you.
That's everybody I know. We all work 12 jobs.
Good, good. All right, so this is it, Emily. This is the final Triple Crown race, and Justify goes for the Triple Crown. And what I have opened here initially is the plot for the Belmont Stakes, and everyone's going to say, well, where's the horses? They're all on the right-hand side because I have filtered by surface distance, and you can't forget that this is 12 furlongs. It's the test of champions, and no one's ever done it before. So it's always got to be a backdrop when you're looking at this race. You know, it's just not a traditional who's going to get the lead kind of race. It's like who's going to get the distance, who has the stamina. We'll get into the pace here. I'm going to change the filter and go to the standard so you can see actually how the horses are plotted under standard. And Emily, what I'm looking at here is Justified, just like his Derby and his Preakness plot was good, but his Belmont plot is even better.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. He looked solid, and his plots in the other two were similar. This square is just that much bigger, but a lot of that reason, and we kind of had this comment come up on Twitter this week, is that it's compared to the other horses in the race. So you have a horse like, let's just say, Noble Indy, for example, who's a circle in there. Well, it's counting in that last race where he had no finish. So things like that, when you're messing around the plot. Otherwise, I think that's pretty much who he is and what the race is going to look like.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's no audible, there's no good magic, right? So this plot would look different if both those were in here. So he does look good on the plot. What I did, I'm going to bring up, Emily. I know you can't see it, but I'm going to bring up the Belmont. And what I did is I kind of cut the plot. I cut Justified out of the plot. So I'm just going to look at the other horses. And when you look at it this way, it looks a lot more contentious, right? It just looks like there's a lot of things that could happen behind Justified. So I just thought it'd be a kind of a good way to look at this and try to evaluate some of these other horses. And my first blush on looking at this is, I would be kind of negative on the 5, Restoring Hope, a little bit negative on Tenfold, and probably the other horse is the Romans horse, the number 2, I think you used to call him Plotty Billy or something like that. Actually, who might like a mile and a half. But other than those three horses, the other horses all have kind of a look. And we'll as we get into the form, we'll talk about some of them. Some we like and some we dislike. But just in general, in behind Justified, it looks like there's a bunch of horses that have a chance at getting a piece of it. So Emily, I'm going to flip over to the horses and just kind of go onto the grid, and I'm going to skip Justify, obviously. Free Drop Billy, he's been here before. He's just the only thing I could say about this horse is if he just kind of grinds, maybe a 4th place finish would be his ceiling, but I just don't. There's just nothing here that I really kind of like about this horse. Do you upgrade this horse? What's your sense of him?
No, it's really hard to give him any more than kind of what you said, like those deep underneath spots, because you look at him on the plot, you look at him on the grid, he's just never shown that kind of winning race for this level. So yeah, it's hard to upgrade him into those 1-2 slots.
Yeah, he's never improved from this 2-year-old season either, which I don't like. Number 3 is Bravazzo, and Emily, we were kind of on this horse last time, and you especially liked him, and I know you always had a like for him. But when I look at his morning line, you think he's going to be a lot higher than 8-1, but at that morning line, I don't like him. I feel like the Preakness was his race. He kind of the thing I don't like, and you see his form. If you see his grid, he's got 3 races where he's run a C. He throws a clunker in now and then, and I'm just concerned that might be the case. And I think last time was the time to have him. And I just don't know about this pace scenario. And when I look at, like a Noble Indy, who's 4 times his morning line, I think Noble Indy's a better horse than him, and I think he proved that in Louisiana. So if there was going to be a horse, if he's in that kind of range, I'm really going to probably take a stand against in the underneath slots.
Yes, I agree. I agree on a couple of those points. One, last time was the time, just based on the fact of just straight up value. I mean, he's 15 to 1. I still think he's probably going to be in there. I mean, you figure Justified's going to be really short. Hofberg, who we'll get to, is going to probably be the really strong second choice. And I just can't see anybody. It's so hard. I tried to go back and watch the race, and it's just the way that it's filmed and the conditions. It's so hard to see, which sort of is just a challenge for this race on a whole. This is going to be the time he's going to be Justified. I felt like it was going to be last time, but I don't think that he can necessarily is going to run that C race and just not show up.
Yeah.
I think that he'll still run a decent race, and I would use him in underneath spots for sure, but he's not my 1-2 in this race.
Yeah. I just think, I'm just kind of looking and, pattern-wise, he ran those two good races, back-to-back, Oaklawn and, at Fairgrounds and the Risen Star. And then he kind of, ran terribly. We thought he ran better than it looked in the Derby, and then he had the good Preakness race. I'm just, again, he's another horse that's, coming back, pretty quickly, obviously, Justified. And I'm just not sure about 1.5 miles for this horse. That's really another thing in my opinion.
I agree with you on that as well.
Yeah.
Both you and I at this point, we're not, we don't really put pedigree in too much, so I don't really know about that. But just kind of physically, he just sort of seems like that 9.5, 10 is pretty much his max.
Yeah, and then if they try to put him in the race early or something like that, I don't know if that's the best thing, for him. But I don't know. If he's anywhere near that 8-1 though, I'm going to take a stand against him in the underneath because I just think that's not value. So it would be interesting to see how he's bet. Okay, the number 4 Hofberg, and this is a horse that's still very lightly raced and improving, and I just think they were pointing for this. Mott was pointing for this race all along, and I think the gallop out he showed was really strong. I thought in the Derby. We went back and watched that and added that. And I just think he's a good horse. He's a really talented horse. And, if anyone's, I think there's 2 horses, maybe even 3, who have a shot to win, or no chance to win this race. He's right up there. He's one of the horses I think has a legitimate shot to win this race. I just think he'd probably be suited by this distance. He's done a lot in a very short time. And I know you're high on him too.
Yeah, I mean, my kind of, I guess, I don't know if the unpopular opinion going into the Derby was I felt that Hofberg was actually a more talented horse than Justified, even though we played it the other way, because Tripp just makes so much of a factor. That Hofberg going into the Derby with his running style and a big full field and just not having that much bottom to him, that much foundation, even though being possibly a more talented horse was going to have a tougher trip. And that's pretty much how it panned out. I still do think that Hofberg could be more talented. But again, you see that square in quadrant 1. And, his value isn't going to be that great either, which it's sort of I would love to make him like a top pick, but then, he's going to be a short price too. So it's, that's kind of tough. I think he's the most likely one to beat Justified, but is value going to be there is a different question.
Right. The value will be in the horizontal wagers, though, right? So if you beat Justified in the pick 6 or the pick 4, the pick 5, you're going to get a lot of value, no matter who you pick, in my opinion. But you're right when you start looking at these vertical ways. So for instance, if you think he's even the second best horse next to Justified, let's say if you just based on trip, the way you got to play the race, I mean, you got to be hoping for somebody underneath in 3rd and 4th, and you got to load up on a Justify Hofberg, maybe Noble Indy if you like that horse, a blend, some big price horse, and just try to load up on a try or a super because there's no value there. If this horse runs underneath Justified, there just really doesn't. It's very hard to do anything in vertical wagers other than like I said, try to get somebody really big for 3rd. And so maybe we have some horses that we can look at for that. The number 5, Restoring Hope. A lot of hype on this horse. We even, like, when we looked at some of the optics works and stuff like that early in his career, we thought this horse, looked like he had some talent. He just never has kind of lived up to it, Emily. And, he doesn't plot well, so I see, right now, I mean, you just look at it, it's just that kind of, there's lots of negatives working against this horse. Didn't show up in the slop, so if there's some wet track again, but again, that whole day, the Churchill, that was a kind of a different sloppy track. And when we talk about Noble Indy, even if there's rain, I don't anticipate it being anywhere near the track condition that was at Churchill. And each track plays differently. So, but Restoring Hope, he's gonna, again, maybe on the bottom of a super ticket, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, to me, he's below, right? If we're putting labels on him, because his grades are below, right? Grade 1, grade 2, B minus, grade 3, even all things considered, it's a C. It's like you'd still want to see something, right?
Right.
Being a little bit against it, I mean, I think he's a horse that could get played just because people, the other Baffer, why would he enter him? They start creating those type of storylines, but when you look at him as a horse, like, he just hasn't done anything that's like brilliant or showed talent, like where if he has these kind of trips or he has this red and then you see like improve or you see trouble or you see like, all this stuff that says, hey, there's something there. He's just got to kind of get to the right spot. It's just, it's not there, right? It's not there in his grid. So if he hasn't run fast enough, and he hasn't run competitive enough in softer stakes editions, it's hard to make a case for this horse at all.
Yeah, I do think he's going to be better going longer. I didn't understand the mile race last time, so I mean that'd be the only thing that I would say in his favor. That I don't think that race was suited for him. The 6 horse is Gronkowski. He's going to get name recognition. I think his morning line, in my opinion, is way too low. When you look at these European horses, typically they don't train them if the horse has dirt. If they think the horse is going to be really good on dirt, they're going to ship him out to the U.S. And if they think he's special. So this horse is running against dirt horses, allowance type dirt horses in Europe. I mean, how good could the fields he's been facing be? I watched his races. I pretty much gave him. He kind of ran winning races, but who's he beating? And I'm really surprised. I mean, I guess with Chad Brown being the trainer named and so forth, but 12-1 in the morning line. This just seems like it's way too low.
Yeah, I think, looking at Twitter, I think that was pretty much what everybody said, but we'll see. I mean, I trust your opinion on this. I know you've been kind of just watching this horse and been negative on him from the start, and I'm with you on that.
Yeah, I'm not even sure he's a mile and a half. He just seems to be rank in some of his races, and they go real slow there early. I don't know.
Do you think they would try to go after Justified?
Oh no, they're not that fast. They don't have.
I mean, I know that he's not that fast, but I mean, do you think that they would, try like to chase like a horse to quit, like a no keep type?
No, I can't even see him getting out of the gate. No, I don't think he has that kind of speed to even be up there for that. I mean, I know he's kind of been forwardly placed in some of his races. He gets right, but I don't know. I mean,
I'm looking at the pop easy lead rank. It just seems like a horse that's like he's kind of got one way to go.
Yeah.
I'm just sort of looking at the notes.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't. Could be. There's always a possibility for that. He gets Ortiz on him. I don't know. It just if that's the case, even if he's bad, he's gonna pretty much hurt his chances of winning the race if that's gonna be something that he tries to do. Class level, I just can't see him competing with these horses. The 7 is Tenfold. He's another horse. I thought the Preakness was. I liked him a lot in the Preakness. I thought that was his race. I thought that was if he was going to win and beat Justified. I thought the Preakness was a better chance than the Belmont. I look at his plot. Let me just go back to his plot and show you that. because I think it's important because I get so many questions on this quadrant 3. He's a square quadrant 3. And the fact that he likes to be up close, he seems to do his better running up close, worries me when you see a plot with horses in quadrant 3 and below horses that are on top of them. And there's like 4 horses on top of them, right? So that's concerning. He just in that race, I thought he had some trouble in the first turn and so forth. But he was in position to win. He got competitive, when the other horse came up to him, Bravazzo. But then he got a little intimidated by Bravazzo. He flipped leads late. And so, I just think he's a horse that's improving, and I expect good things from him. I just don't know if this is the race for him. I just, I wouldn't stand against anyone who kind of likes him. But, I'm just, if I were kind of ranking him, he'd be like 4th or 5th kind of choice, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And then also remember that weekend at Preakness, all of Steve Asmussen's horses were firing.
Oh yeah.
So that was kind of his big effort. You try to see if all those horses are firing and they're all running, top races, to kind of project that he's going to make a move forward. It's hard to see, right? If anything, he'd run the same, which is just going to be a little bit below some of these horses that, are, Justified, who's already faster, and then a horse like Hofburg, who you can project is going to have a move forward in this race and just be faster. So I'm kind of with you there.
The 8 is Vino Rosso, and he's a horse that I think probably the 1.5 miles is going to suit. Again, if I was kind of ranking them and look at odds, 8-1 to me would be short for him. He's kind of an odd horse. I think he ran his best in the wood where he got pace to run at. And I'm not sure that the pace is going to be there in this race. I just think he needs a little flow to go. So, again, he's a little bit underneath my top ranked horses in this race. He's going to be in quadrant 4 in that kind of race shape. And, maybe he could be closer, if the pace is slower. But he kind of doesn't run his best races that way. I just think he needs some pace to run at. That's just my opinion on how he runs.
Yeah, he's a little soft to me as well for a lot of those reasons. And again, just hasn't really shown that one race that gets you excited.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought his Wood Memorial was okay, not great. Here's the horse that's really, I know it's intrigued me and you, number 9, Noble Indy. We were high on him going into the Kentucky Derby, and he just didn't handle the slop at all. So, and he wasn't pushed. So I really think for whatever reason he's going to be fresh coming into this race. They've taken the blinkers off, which I think is a good thing. It'll get him to relax. They change the jockeys, which I think is a good thing. They go from Florent Giroux to Castellano, and I just think those are good things. I think he is a 1.5 mile horse. I don't think he'll have a problem getting the 1.5 mile. Now, he's going to have to track Justified. I don't know if they go after him a little bit earlier, but he's going to be in the mix, and I think he's the kind of horse that's going to be able to stay on for a piece of it. I think he may be a key exotics horse because he's just a ridiculous morning line. When you compare his morning line, again, to Bravazzo, it's ridiculous because he's 4 times what Bravazzo is, and he's a better horse, in my opinion, than Bravazzo. So I think this is a horse that, if we're going to kind of do something, and by the way, Emily and I are going to be doing some plays on Twin Spires in the players pool, and one of the things that we might have we're going to probably concentrate on the pick 6, but we may have money to play around and maybe a super to try it. And if you're going to do anything in the Belmont, I think this is a horse that I might want to kind of key on in that exotic play.
Yeah, and I mean, just a couple other things. It's like Todd Pletcher does that with a lot of these horses where he kind of has, leaves off, they run subpar race in the Derby, they skip the Preakness, and then they are at their best in the Belmont, right? Win or lose. But that's something that he does often. You brought up the points just as far as value and trip and being one of the best horses. I mean, we liked him last time. And also one of the reasons that I upgraded Bravazzo in the Preakness was because being outside in those outside paths were not where you wanted to be in this race, and that's where this horse was. So in addition to not handling and not being asked, he was on, the worst part of the track, which all those horses that were on the outside ended up not being anywhere near the finish. he was one of them. So you can almost you draw a line through that race. Again, he just doesn't have any, he doesn't have any knocks.
No.
And, I mean, the morning line's crazy. I don't know if it sticks. It did lie. I didn't think it would last time, but it did. So, I don't know. But he's a definite must-use.
Yeah, and look at the horses that ran in the Louisiana races, right? Bravazzo has shown himself to run well. And also Lone Sailor, I thought, ran a great race in the Preakness, right? What I could see of it, because he looked like he was struggling way wide on the turn, way out of it. Next thing I know, he was in contention when the fog lifted on the inside. I don't know how he did that, but I just thought he ran a hell of a race from what I could tell. And so I just think those Louisiana races could be a little bit underrated. So that's just something to watch. And again, at that price, and with those changes, I think those are positive changes. Getting back to a track that's not going to be like soup with Castellano and the blinkers off. I think he's a horse to really kind of look seriously at. And again, I'm just going to bring up the plot again just to go back. He's a small circle in quadrant 1, and if you don't think Bravazzo's going to fire the same race, he's kind of a small circle in quadrant 1, but they're the only 2 small circles in quadrant 1 if you took Justify out of it in a race that doesn't have a lot of pace. So I think that's favorable, when you look at all tone. Okay, so moving on to the final horse is Blended Citizen, who I think is a talented horse. I think is going to get the distance. And the thing about him, right, he's the only horse to run over the track, and he won. He won the Peter Pan, and that was a nice race. I thought he got a good trip. He got the flow. But I just think it's a horse that they can kind of, when you look at closers, I think it's him and Hofberg are the horses I like him off the pace, and he's a much bigger price. He's not and I think he's going to thrive going longer. And again, he's got the win over the track. What's your thoughts on him?
I think all those things. I think he can be around. I just don't think he's as talented as Hofberg and Justify. So he's a little bit more underneath. But again, he's going to be a big price. So like that you can kind of take away some of those questions, right? Just because you're getting compensated on that. He'll be around. I mean, he's super consistent.
Yeah.
And that's, says a lot.
Yeah, and you got to think he was pointed to this race, right? Unless I didn't. Was there an injury? I mean, or he didn't get into the Derby, right? He was just below the Derby.
I think so. Yeah, I think he was. He was just below. And in the past, the Peter Pan has been the prep to this race. So I think that he did run well. This is where they were going, and definitely worth taking their shot.
Yeah, so in my opinion, to wrap up, Justify is the horse again, Emily. I just think there's Hofberg, probably most likely, but Blended Citizen, and I give Noble India a little bit of shade. He'd probably be more my exotics key of horses that kind of I like, to compete in this race. So, that's
one thing I do want to point out, kind of, if we can go back to the plot real quick.
Sure.
It's just talking about Trip and as far as
let me just. Oops.
You got it. Hold on.
Let me just go back to the real plot because I've had this cutoff plot here for a while.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So if we can just go to the standard.
Okay.
So sort of the way that I see it, and almost just kind of looking at it as a visual one piece versus like kind of a horse by horse. But you see Justify out there, and for some reason, let's say he decides that the distance is just too much, right? So he's shortening strides late. We're being a little bit of what if there. But then you have sort of these horses that are clustered together, right? The 3, 5, 9, 7, 10, 2, for the most part, are kind of in that middle patch.
Right, correct.
And so that sets up, Hofberg, who's got kind of more of a middle move, sustained run, to get that first run on Blended Citizen, sort of circle that pack of horses that cluster up. And if, Justified is getting a little tired towards the end regarding distance or whatever, somebody decides to push him, that Trip just kind of draws up right for Hofberg. And then your case you made for Blended Citizen, he's just sort of there too, sort of passing those tired type horses. So, I think just kind of the more we talk about it, that's kind of how I see the race shape playing out.
Yep. So that's our analysis for the Belmont. We will have a package available. So go to optixeq.com and we're going to do a write-up of these with the wagering labels and so forth. Again, on twinspires.com, we'll be part of the Players 6 pool. Well, we will be the Players 6 pool. There's 2 out there, so look for the Optics one. And Emily and I are going to be starting next week what we call kind of a video cast of optics. And what we're going to be doing is reviewing these big races. We'll do it once every 2 weeks or twice a month. And we'll be going over topics and just, if anyone has any questions or they want answered about races or about optics products, send us a line. We'll be announcing that shortly, but probably going to start next week, and we'll review the Belmont and go through some other things. So look for that. And, thanks for your continued support. Emily, any closing? What a trooper. She made it through. No coughing fits.
Alternating between the mute from times, but yeah, made it through. I think we got a lot of good content out there, so I'm happy.